Hey guys, Alex J here. Here's a quick tutorial on how to easily find the true tempo of a sample or song in Pro Tools. Most people normally rely on their ears and the tap to tempo function, but that's not really the most accurate way to go about it. Let's look at how we can use the identify beat function on Pro Tools to find out the exact tempo.
First, let's create a click track. We can do that one of two ways. We can click on the track menu and click on the Create Click Track option, or we can assign a custom shortcut so that it triggers that function. In my case, I created Control, Command, and T. I'll leave a link in the description below for a video tutorial explaining on how to do custom shortcuts in Mac OS X for Pro Tools or any other DAW. Once you create the click track, select the track you're trying to identify the tempo for. Listen to the overall groove. The first thing that we need to figure out is the time signature. Is it in 4/4, 3/4, 6/8, 12/8? Once we've figured that out, the best way to find the tempo is to get a concise loop that we can play back continuously without any interruptions or hiccups. Let's start with an actual song. So we have this electro track, and let's say we want to do a remix, but we need to be able to put it in a grid in order to chop it up into different sections. Let's take a listen. The great thing about this loop is that it has a kick from the beginning, and that will help us get to the finish line quicker. If I have to guess, it's probably close to 128 BPM, as many dance songs are written in this tempo. But I'm not sold on it until I double check. Let's remember from our Pro Tools shortcut video that the number 4 on the numeric keypad toggles the playback function between normal and loop mode. Let's place Pro Tools on loop playback mode. Now, it's important that we assign the edit mode to slip, as we need to be as close as we can to the loop. Let's now try to find a clean 2 or 4 bar loop we can splice and use. Let's take a listen. Okay, so now we got a general idea of the loop, so let's get surgical. Place the playback head a little bit before but close to the transient of the downbeat, in this case, the first kick, and make sure you have the tap to transients function enabled, and then press the tab key to go to the transient. Once you see the head is in the correct transient, press Command E to splice it. Now play it back from that spot and make sure it really sounds like the beginning of the loop. Make sure that the insertion follows playback function is off for all of these operations. I normally always have it off. You can toggle it on or off by using N on your keyboard. In this case, we chose to analyze a 2-bar loop. Now, go through a similar process for the end of the loop. So again, get close and help yourself with the tap to transients function to find the appropriate transient. Once you have the clean loop, highlight it and play it back. Is it looping properly? Are you hearing any time hiccups, or is it perfect? If the loop is nice and clean like this one, then we're ready to find a tempo for it. Now, put Pro Tools on grid mode and drag the loop all the way to the beginning of the timeline. With the loop highlighted, let's press Command I to pull up the Identify Beat dialog. Now, we have to actually define the start and the end of the loop. In this case, the loop was in 4/4, so let's make sure that we keep that setting consistently throughout. The start defaults to bar 1, which is what we want. In case it doesn't do that, just type the number 1 on the first box and it will reset to bar 1. As far as the end goes, since we chose a 2-bar loop, that means that the next bar after the loop is bar 3. So we must choose the end to be the downbeat of beat 3. Let's type 3 on the corresponding box. Listen to the click with the track. That feels pretty good, right? Right away, you see that I was wrong. The tempo is actually not 128. You'll see it's so precise that it will display a number with several decimals. Pay close attention as this will be a major factor on deciphering the tempo. In this case, the tempo according to Pro Tools is 126.3296. Anytime you get these types of results, which are pretty common when using identify beat, you will have to round up either to the whole BPM or 1 BPM higher. In this case, we'll settle with 126 BPM since the decimals are below 8.5. If the tempo was 125.6989, then we would round up to 127 since it's higher than 126.5. Anyways, tempos are always a clean number with no decimals. I mean, nobody goes, well, I'm gonna write a song today at 132.95 BPM. Now that we know 126 is the tempo, let's go and make the change. Click on the red flag on the tempo function on the timeline and dial in 126 BPM. Keep the resolution in quarter notes. After double checking we're still on grid mode, let's move the selection to beat 1 of any bar. After you've done that, extend the selection to the original length of the audio file. You can always mute the track on and off to double check that the click is right. If something is off, there's a couple of things we can double check. First, make sure that the grid is actually on. Then, look at the grid value and make sure it's set to bars and beats. A good starting point when it comes to the rhythm scale value is quarter note subdivisions. Always leave some wiggle room so that you can maneuver in case you need to move stuff around in the future or add anything before the track. Now, let's look at another example. Here's a quick snippet of a reggaeton track which we want to find the tempo for. Let's take a listen. This track starts with a rhythmic string pattern, which is not the best reference for time since the physical action that the string players perform to produce the sound makes time seem slower or faster depending on the context it's in. This is true even with samples. So, the best practice is to always find a clear beat and then splice it away. In this case, the reggaeton drums come in clearly towards the middle part of the loop. So, let's use that as a reference. Let's again pick a 2-bar loop. Let's get close to the beginning of the beat and splice it after we've used the tap to transients function. Now, let's check we're in the right spot by playing back the track. Now, using tap to transient, let's splice the end of the loop and drag it to the beginning of the timeline. Since this is a 2-bar loop, let's make the beginning bar 1 and the end bar 3. The tempo, according to Pro Tools, is 97.0776. So that tells us that the tempo is 97, since it's below a 0.5. Press undo, and then let's tweak the tempo to be 97. Now, let's put it back in grid mode and drag the selection to the beginning of any bar. Once in place, drag the beginning and the end so we get the original length of the file. But with the difference that now everything's gonna be in time with the grid. Remember, always leave some space before the actual start in case you need to move stuff around or you need to include different elements in the track. So check out how wobbly the time is with the strings in the intro of the track, even though when the beat comes in, it's actually perfect. Weird enough, it's locked in with the tempo, but it's not perfect at all. This is why I made the comment earlier about not using the strings as a reference for time identification. Now, let's look at a very different example. Here's a jazzy piano loop that we want to use as a base to build drums and more instruments around it, but we need to find the tempo first. If we listen to the loop, we can instantly tell that it's in 4/4 and it's in a minor key. It seems that the loop is pretty even, so let's take a listen. It's actually a perfect 4-bar loop. Now, let's find the tempo. The loop is already at the beginning, so we don't need to do any dragging. Let's highlight it and pull the Identify Beat panel. Let's dial 1 for the beginning of the loop, but this time we'll dial bar 5 as the end since it's a 4-bar loop that will end on bar 5. Press OK or Enter. Look at the tempo. It reads 104.9998. This means the tempo is 105 BPM. Now let's go back and dial 105 BPM in the tempo configuration window. Sweet, sweet, sweet music, ladies and gents. Check by muting the music on or off. Try duplicating it as well and see if it makes a difference. Now, let's look at our last example. Listen to the loop. This is a beautiful guitar loop that's in 3/4, so basically 3/4 notes per bar. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is where rhythm scales are so important because if you just use 4/4 and guess the tempo, the feeling will not quite be there, so make sure to identify the time signature first. Let's start by changing the meter to 3/4. Go to the beginning of the timeline, add the meter change by clicking on the plus sign, and change the default 4/4 meter into 3/4. For this example, we're going to leave the resolution to quarter notes in regards with the click, but sometimes it might be advantageous to change it to eighth notes. You'll notice the loop is not perfect, but we need the best we can get, even if that just means one clean bar. Now, let's look for a clean loop. Since the time is super wobbly, we'll have to do our best and go with our ears until we can find a solid loop. Once we find one we like, we'll get down to business. This is a great candidate for some beat detective action later on. Go check out our Mastering Beat Detective video to see how we can be sneaky and fix the tempo on this beautiful loop so that it aligns perfectly with the tempo grid. The loop is definitely wacky and needs to be fixed into the grid in order to have a clean loop. That's a sweet 4-bar loop. So let's identify the beat and let's set the end to bar 5. So according to Protools, the tempo is 129.6392, which means the actual tempo is 130. So let's undo and dial in 130 BPM. And again, let's check we're on grid mode and let's move the selection to the first beat on any bar. Then extend the file to the fullest extent and then play it back with the click. As you can hear, the loop is not perfect. It seems the player slowed down towards the end. If you don't want perfect timing through Beat Detective, you can always stretch the audio selection to the grid. Select the TCE option from the trim tool and select the end of the loop and stretch it to the nearest bar. Once it finishes rendering, you hear the entire audio clip being perfectly inside the time frame. Let's hear the entire loop.
Wow, that was a lot of information, but hopefully everything you do from now on will make more sense when it comes to the groove. That's it for now. We'll look at all of this and much more in our vocal recording lab, so be sure to check that out on our channel as well. Give us a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Visit us on the web at www.musicmastermind.tv and create a free membership to get access to this and many more incredible videos regarding advanced recording, mixing, and music production practices happening right here inside the professional high-end studio environment. There's a lot of really cool content that you won't see anywhere else. That's it for now. I'll see you very soon. Alex J here, over and out.